Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Gwen Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
Good evening. It's October 4th, and you've reached Black Authors Matter TV. We are excited. We have a jam-packed show tonight, so we're going to get right into it. I'm Gwen Richardson, your host for tonight.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Good evening, everyone.
And we have an amazing lineup again tonight. What we're going to do first, though, I do want to just remind people about the National Black Book Festival coming up in a couple of weeks. It's almost here. And it's going to be amazing. So we are very excited about that. And we have 3 videos we're going to show you first at the top of the show from people who are attending the festival or supporting the festival. They want you to see their work. They're very short videos. So enjoy those, and then we'll be right back.
From Chapter 1, 1890, at the boarding house. Several days later, in the late afternoon, Addie arrived at Tom Mitchell's door at the end of the hallway to clean his room. She knocked perfunctorily, and not expecting him to be there because it was not yet evening, she walked right in. Addie gasped when she saw Tom Mitchell sitting at his desk. She almost dropped the basket she held in her hand. If Mrs. Beatty finds out one of her boarders was still in his room when I entered, Addie quickly blurted out an apology. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I'll come back later. She immediately backed out of the room, ready to close the door. Nonsense, Tom Mitchell said, putting his pen in the inkwell as he spoke. You don't have to do that. You can straighten things up while I'm here. I'll be working at my desk. Yes, sir, she said. She glanced over her shoulder and looked down the hall to see if anyone was watching her, but no one was there. She re-entered his room, closing the door behind her. Addie tried to work as if she were alone in the room. She did not dare look over at Tom Mitchell as he sat at his desk. But she did not have to look at him to know that even though he was sitting there, he was not working. She could feel the force of his gaze upon her while she worked. He was staring at her while she moved around his room, and she knew it. She finished her work as quickly as she could. She just wanted to get out of that room and away from that man. Alone with a white man in one of her rooms? I just hope Mrs. Beatty never finds out. She'll have my job for sure. She quickly gathered Tom Mitchell's clothes up off the floor, his shirt and collar, his nightshirt and drawers, and filled the basket. There, now, I'm finished. She felt a wave of relief. Then, looking down at her basket, Addie walked toward the door. But just as she started to pass Tom Mitchell, he reached out from where he sat at his chair and grabbed her arm firmly. Addie gasped and briefly held her breath, her eyes fixed on the basket. Oh my God! Her body tensed. What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do to me?
the future of us to the truth. I invite you to come to the Blue Nile, to come with me and see the pictures of the sacred Nile that shows our legacy as a people of faith. This book, Sacred Nile, will change how you see history, change how you see yourselves, and change how you see the sacred agency of people like us. Come with me from Ethiopia to Egypt. Travel the Nile, travel the history, travel our place in time. Sacred Nile is perpetuity.
Okay, we had some volume issues with the last one, so we're going to be showing it again next week. And we wanted to, because we want to be able for you all to be able to hear what he said. It was very interesting. So we're going to work on that, make sure the next week it plays like it's supposed to. At any rate, we have an amazing lineup tonight, and everybody's historical in some way or another in terms of the subject matter. So we're going to admit our first guest, and he's a professor of history at the University of Texas, UT, and he has written an amazing book called The Third Reconstruction, and I have a copy here, which we will give away at the end of his interview, and we give it away based on trivia, so just be on the lookout and let's listen for what he's saying. It might be a clue in during the interview. So we want to welcome Professor, now I don't want to mispronounce your first name, so I'm going to say Professor Joseph, and you can say what your first name is.
Oh, certainly. It's Peniel. Peniel is my first name.
Peniel. Okay, I wasn't sure, and that's an unusual name. So is that a family name? Oh, it's a biblical.
Old Testament. It's Genesis 31. It's where Jacob wrestles with the archangel, and he calls the place Peniel.
Oh,
Where I've seen the face of God yet still live.
Okay. Okay. Well, I've never seen anybody with the name. So have you ever researched to see if you have fellow travelers that have your first name? Have you ever
Well, you know, I'm Haitian, you know, first generation, and there's a lot of churches in Haiti called Peniel. I've actually seen some people called Peniel who are in Asia called Peniel.
Okay.
A lot of churches in Haiti called Peniel.
Okay. Well, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And congratulations on the release of your book.
Oh, thank you.
So you call, it's a period that you describe after the election of Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, where you describe it as the Third Reconstruction. So what made you use Reconstruction as your reference point, and what are some similarities that you see that made you draw that conclusion?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. You know, the reason why I call the book The Third Reconstruction is because after the election of Donald Trump in 2016, you know, everybody was searching for answers, especially the Black community, when you think about what Trump meant for us. And I saw a lot of similarities and patterns happening between the time period right after the Civil War. Now, people kept comparing it to the 1950s and 60s, which I call the Second Reconstruction. But the first Reconstruction is really those 3 decades right after the end of the Civil War. You get the Reconstruction Amendments, you get Black citizenship and dignity to an extent, and then you get white backlash all at the same time, right? So you get historically Black colleges and universities, you get a lot of Black women who are leading churches, who are leading schools, who are part of civic and community organizations, men as well, but I really focus on Black women throughout the book. And you also have a pattern of backlash, voter suppression, convict lease systems, racial profiling. And this is the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s. And it really, I marked the end of Reconstruction with the white riot in Wilmington, North Carolina, November 8th, 9th, 10th, that murders over 100 Black people, including a bunch of duly elected Black elected officials. Thousands flee, and Wilmington goes from being a majority Black city to a city that's 7-8% now. And just so we all know, last year, Wilmington finally buried a Black man who had been murdered, Joshua Halsey, during the Wilmington massacre, father of 4. He had been left in an unmarked grave, and they buried his remains and acknowledged, and the city has been acknowledging over the last 2 decades with different commissions and different things. So I looked at Trump and really 08 to 2000, really 08 to the present. The 4 hinge points are the election of Obama, the rise of Black Lives Matter 1.0 after Trayvon Martin, who was killed in 2012, but Black Lives Matter begins in 2013 by 3 Black women. The rise of MAGA and Trump. So it's not just Trump, but it's MAGA. Make America Great Again is really part of the lost cause narrative that really comes out of Reconstruction. And that lost cause, it includes white supremacy, but it's bigger than white supremacy. It's about racial caste. It's about venerating the Klan. It's about white people, and at times non-white people, telling themselves a story about America that is fundamentally anti-Black, but they can a lot of times gaslight us by saying that they're colorblind, that it's not about race, right? Even as they're massacring us, they'll say, well, Black men are rapists. That's why so many are lynched, right? And so when you look at, and then finally, the 4th point is 2020 and everything that happened during the pandemic, everything from BLM to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, to the way in which Black people disproportionately died during the pandemic, all the way up until the election of Biden and Harris, Stacey Abrams and the organizing she did, all the way up to the January 6th white riots, which again are very similar to both 1898. And also, when we think about the January 6th congressional hearings, we had congressional hearings in May of 1871, public hearings about Klan violence, right? So all this stuff has happened before. So we're sort of, these are these patterns, and that's why I call it the Third Reconstruction.
Well, you said a mouthful in just a short time.
Yeah, you did. Now, the first Reconstruction, right after the Civil War, we had Black elected officials in Congress and the Senate. I don't think we had any governors, but when Black people, Black males got the right to vote, because the females still didn't have the right to vote then, yes. Any females. So then basically all of that was done away with a few years later, because there was a backlash. So generally, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I remember the night when President Obama was elected, and my husband said, and the elation and excitement. And my husband said, my husband's older than me, and he said, there's going to be a backlash. And I said, you think so? You really? I couldn't see it at the time. But he said, yeah, there's going to be a response to this. He said, we need to enjoy this moment because there will be a backlash. So I guess it's fortunate that it wasn't at the level of the first Reconstruction, or in terms of the violence, the wholesale violence,
I think that the backlash was the election of Donald Trump.
It was, but it started happening even before Trump got elected.
Yes, it did. I mean, you had the Tea Party. That was part of the backlash. So, but I mean, I just kind of see where Dr. Peniel is going with what he's saying about the different levels of Reconstruction, and now we're at the Third Reconstruction.
There's definitely some patterns, patterns and trends, and things can be cyclical. So and they said there's nothing new under the sun, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. So where do you see things going from this point? Do you have a vision for where you think things will go from here?
Well, it really depends, because, one of the things I talk about in the book is this conflict between Reconstructionists who are supporters of multiracial democracy versus redemptionists who are advocates of white supremacy. And when you see those battles, on one level, Reconstructionists helped elect not only Barack Obama, but Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They've passed all the helped pass all the legislation that we've seen. Justice Jackson, Ketanji, is a Reconstructionist progress, right? So there are these moments and levels of progress, and at the same time, you see voter suppression, and you see the white riot in January 6th, and the big lies about the 2020 election, and the CRT hoax, the anti-CRT hoax, and the anti-wokeness. These are all just anti-Black racist sentiments, cloaked under a new guise of parent rights and all kinds of things against truth teaching. So it really just depends. I mean, if we have one whole party now, just like we did then, that is anti-Black, but also anti-democracy. Then it was the Democratic Party. That was the party of slavery and the party of John Calhoun and the Confederacy. Now it's the Republican Party, the GOP. So if the Republican Party can take complete control over the federal government the way it has over certain states, then things can be dire for Black people, just as dire as they were during the first Reconstruction. And you have to remember, Black people are only 12% of the population. They're 38% of those who are incarcerated, right? Even more of those who are on death row, right? Disproportionately poor and overrepresented in every negative social economic indicator in the United States. So, there's one way where if redemptionists continue to win, things are going to get even more dire for us than they ever have been. And another outcome could be, Reconstructionists winning what I call the narrative war, because so much of this is an argument about a story we tell ourselves about America, right? And when we think about, we can tell ourselves a story where we are constantly lying about the past. We don't want to talk about slavery and, Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, or Memphis and New Orleans in 1866. There's a long, brutal history here. And then there's a good part of that history with so many Black activists who struggled to transform this country and make this country better. People like Ida B. Wells, who I talk about. I talk about Angela Davis and Ella Baker and the Tamika Mallory, Stacey Abrams, Barbara Smith, Audre Lorde, so many other people. So it really just depends. I think we're in for a titanic struggle and fight. I do highlight Black women like Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project. I highlight Kimberly Crenshaw. I highlight so many Black women who've really been leading a struggle for an expansive vision of American democracy and Black liberation and citizenship and dignity during the Third Reconstruction. They were around during the first two, but they never really received the credit as co-architects of the Black liberation movement, which is why I really, and I dedicate the book to my mother and Black women. And my mother's 83 and, a Haitian immigrant, and she's the person who was my first history teacher. I was on my first picket line in elementary school in New York City, Mount Sinai Hospital, 1199 SEIU, which I later learned was Malcolm X's union and was Dr. King's union as well. So, I think it really depends, but I hope that people will really support a Reconstructionist multiracial democracy vision. And I think that we should really listen and stand in solidarity with, especially, Black women who are the Democratic Party's most reliable voter, who are organizing and trying to do so much in our community. Things like Roe and voter suppression impact them in really hard ways. I support Black men, of course, as well, but I think we owe it to ourselves and our community to single out and say we're in solidarity with Black women and Black women as leaders and co-architects of this movement.
I like that you said that, because I was going to ask you at the beginning of the of your discussion, when you first mentioned Black men, there were many people who realized or who pointed out, I should say, that there were many Black men who actually supported Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
And you know, Black women overwhelmingly supported Hillary Clinton, whether they liked her or not. But Black men leaned more toward Trump. Why do you think that is? And do you talk a bit about that in your book as well?
Yeah, I do. You know, I think one, I'll say, because I know the data, you know, Black women in terms of Hillary definitely supported Hillary, but Black women's vote dropped from 2012 to 2016 by about 7%. So they didn't support her in the same way as Obama. A lot of that is due to the Shelby v. Holder decision. But a lot of that is due to Hillary's own flaws as a candidate. I still think we should have supported her, and I supported her at the ballot box. But we had a critique of how she treated and mistreated Black people, Black women, Lanny Guinier, so many different things. And another thing I'll have to say is that, you know, 80+% of Black men supported Hillary Clinton. But when you think about historically, you're like, wow, that should have been 90%, right? It should have been. So the overwhelming majority of Black male voters voted for Hillary and then voted for Biden, Trump, the overwhelming. So 8 out of 10. But no, Trump was still able to get a significant figure when you think about it. By the time Biden is elected, probably maybe 95% of Black women are voting for Biden, and there's still a robust maybe 15 to 20% of Black men voting the other way. You know, I think part of this has to do with patriarchy in our society. Part of it has to do with sexism and misogyny. Part of it has to do with the fact that when we think about these categories of redemptionists versus reconstructionists, they are not always primarily just color coded. So you can have reconstructionists who are white people, right? Historically hasn't been the majority, but you can have reconstructionists who are Asian American, Pacific Islander, who are indigenous, who are Latinx, queer, the whole thing. But at the same token, you can have redemptionists, and these are the advocates of the lost cause and white supremacy, who are also multiracial and a rainbow coalition of redemptionists, right? So you think about conservatives, the Fox News, the Black folks who are, you know, alongside of that. Clarence Thomas, right? He's a redemptionist. Kanye West is wearing White Lives Matter stuff,
right,
with these people, and just, you know, these are clowns at this point, right? So I think that, of course, our community has certain aspects of redemptionism in our community, and we had that during racial slavery because we had people who dropped dime on us when we were planning slave rebellions. So we have to understand this has always been around. Malcolm X called it house Negroes versus field Negroes. He was calling the house Negroes redemptionists. He was saying these are the folks who, when the master got sick, they said, we sick. They said, we sick, right? And the field Negroes, Malcolm defined himself as a field Negroes who were hoping and praying for the master to die and his whole family, you know, because they understood that slavery was this immoral system, this reprehensible system. And so, you know, I think that there are certain Black men who are lost to us as a community. And the only thing could be is that maybe we can tell a narrative where, and a story about ourselves where future generations are not going to be, you know, as lost.
Well,
I have a question.
okay.
That I think the drop in support for Hillary was also affected by the fact that the Obama presidency it was historic. And so the passion for him couldn't compare with Hillary. You know, you were gonna have some drop off just because Obama was historic and there was lots of passion, enthusiasm, and everything for him versus Hillary was seen more as a politician. But my question that I have is, do you see all of the progress tied to whether or not the Democratic Party is in power? Because if that's the case, then there's always going to be an up and down roller coaster if it's perceived that we can only make progress if Democrats control the White House and the Congress.
Well, right now I'd say yes, because you have one whole party that is anti-democratic and anti-Black. So these are not two different choices that you can mix and mingle and say, okay, it's a Republican Party of the 1950s and the 1960s and the 70s, where even as you had conservatives in that party and people who supported Nixon, et cetera, Eisenhower, but they're also centrists and moderates and even liberals on areas of social justice and things like that, right? No, now you have the whole party that is captured by QAnon and captured by uh, uh, white supremacists and racial terrorists and oligarchs. So no, right now, yes, you're invested in the Democratic Party in the same manner that Frederick Douglass was invested in the Republican Party. He knew the Republican Party of the late 19th century had its own manner of corruption and different stuff, but he would always plead with the community that he understood the Democrats would cause even greater harm to the Black community. Do you see? So even if there might be a Republican who's saying they're going to help out this specific sector of the Black community, or individual Blacks get access because of their allegiance, they're doing extraordinarily irreparable harm to the Black community with their stances on reproductive justice and criminal justice and voting rights and just democracy in general. The party is fundamentally anti-Black, and so we cannot support that party. And that hurts the entire country, because I agree with you, it means that we don't have the robust choices. If we had two pro-democracy parties who just were trying to get to a more robust democracy through different policy measures and tactics, we would have much more leverage, because you could say each election, you could swing an election, and for Black people, the outcome is going to be very similar no matter who wins. So imagine a Republican Party that would also nominate Justice Jackson to the Supreme Court. At that point, we've got a lot of leverage. We've got a lot of leverage if that's the case, right? So,
one thing about
but we have a Republican Party. Yeah, we have a Republican Party that's going to nominate Amy Coney Barrett and all these different people, right? And so that's how Roe was lost. And Roe is impacting Black women the worst. You know, that's why Black women.
But they're lockstep. The credit I've always given the Republican Party is that whether they hate it or love it, you will never know, because they're not going to go into the media and talk against each other. Yeah. They're going to be lockstep. They're going to support their party by supporting whatever candidate the majority says we're going to support, or they're going to support. I'm not a Republican, but I think that's how they're able to advance their policies, because they're lockstep. And I think that they have a sense of unity that Democrats still need to learn.
Well, you know, I agree with you, but I also think it's not so much as unity when you have a cult, when you have a religious cult like apparatus that really destroys anybody who disagrees. It's not a robust, healthy political organism. One of the reasons why Democrats fight so much is that there's true democracy here. And I think think of the Black community. I grew up in the Black church, New York City, the Black Baptist church. There were many disagreements that I saw. People still loved each other, but it was robust disagreements between deacons and pastors and the sisters in the church. You know, we had arguments, and I saw those arguments, but then people came together. So part of being able to argue with your family, with your friends, with your loved ones, your spouse, it's about freedom, right? You have the freedom to do that.
But at the same time, I mean, and I know we're running out of time, but I just feel like in my family, if I'm going to argue with my family, I'm going to argue with my family indoors. I'm not going to broadcast it to the world that I'm arguing with my family.
No, I agree, but we've lost the ability to keep it in-house with social media and the press. You know, so I think that though that day and age, I think historically politicians and politics has always been this messy, but now with Twitter and social media,
it makes it worse.
Makes it worse.
Yeah. Social media has definitely made it worse.
Yeah.
I just, from my point of view, I think that looking at our progress is only if a Democrat is in the White House is limiting it's just short-sighted. That's just my
Well,
take on it.
I think if you had two normative parties,
Yes.
that's the correct view. But I think the post-Trump Republican Party, that is not a correct view. You know, but I think if you say if you had normative parties, then that's the correct view about special interest.
Right. And
You've
I'm
got
with you
one
on that.
whole party that is in support of white supremacy and racial terror and violence against Black people and other people of color. So that is not the correct view.
Okay, well, I mean, we all have our opinions. I just,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can have our
I
opinions, but I'm just saying
I don't.
factually, the
Right.
Republican
Yeah.
Party is right now a party of anti-democracy, a party of supporting white supremacy, a party of vicious anti-Black racism. Those are just facts, right? And so there's no, like, the party that's saying Black people are teaching our second graders critical race theory. Critical race theory is a hoax to stop truth teaching. The 1619 Project is a project that actually valorizes the United States. Most of those folks have not read it. I'm teaching that now, and I've read it 3 times. So as a historian, I can talk about facts, and factually, the modern day Republican Party is a white supremacist party. That's just the facts. That's unfortunate, but that's the facts. And so Black people seeing those two parties, there's no way to say, hey, maybe we should support Republicans. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I just, you know, we can have independent Black people. We don't all have to say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's
Episode
different.
is
Saying
by
that
their
you're
name.
independent is
Because
different.
I'm
Yeah.
an independent voter. I
Yeah.
don't, I gave up on party labels 20 years ago.
Okay.
Because, you know, I just don't, everything's not as, anyway, I love history, and I love the fact that you're on talking about history. And this, anybody who watches this show knows that I love history.
Right. I wish we could talk a lot longer.
We are 2 minutes over our time.
Yes.
So what I want to do before you go, Professor Joseph, is this. I want to give away a copy of your book. And for the people who are watching, here's a trivia question. And for Professor Joseph, the Third Reconstruction, I want to ask this one question. Where in what Texas city does Professor Joseph reside? And you can find that in the synopsis of the book. And normally we give people a little bit of time. So whoever wins the book, we'll mail it to them. But normally it's one of our regular viewers that watches every week. So thank you so much, and congratulations on your book.
Oh, no,
and I wish we had a little bit more time, but you know, our time goes by really fast in every second.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great
it does. But what I will do, because we didn't get a chance to mention, but you do have some appearances coming up, and I'll go ahead and put those in the chat for anybody who may be in. Okay, somebody said the answer, so I can say where you are.
Okay. Okay.
So who may be in the Austin area, or even in the Houston area, who would like to see you and get their book signed. I want to make sure that they're able to do that.
Okay, great.
Right.
Yeah,
so the answer was Austin, Texas, and Mary Evans. She wins the book frequently. You get your copy of the book.
Okay, I'm happy for you, Mary.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you for continuing to advance our history and let people know from whence we've come and how these trends and patterns continue to repeat themselves.
No, thank you so much. Thank you both for having me.
And thank you for being here. Best wishes to you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Mary won the book. So we're going to move right along to our next interview, because we actually run a little bit behind on it. And our next guest is Minda Harts. She has a book called Right Within, and the subhead is How to Heal from Racial Trauma in the Workplace. So Minda is an workplace and equity consultant, and she is also a best-selling and award-winning author of some other books. So we want to welcome Minda Harts to Black Authors Matter TV.
Hi, thank you both for having me. Honored to be here.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you. So what made you write the book about racial trauma in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had no plans on writing that book until that wasn't on my bingo card. But what I realized after writing my first book, The Memo, after being in corporate America for 15 years, even though I left it, I still had a lot of trauma that I didn't realize I needed to unpack. All of the racism, sexism, any type of discrimination that you experience, just because you leave a job or you get a new manager doesn't mean that all that stuff just goes away. And I realized that it was starting to impact my mental health, the way I showed up in other ways. So I wasn't the angry Black woman in the office, but I might have been angry when I got home, right? So it's impacting other areas of my life. And I just wanted us to talk about what healing could look like from all of these traumas that we should have never been exposed to in the first place.
Wow. So did you feel that you were wearing a mask basically at work, and then when you came home, you took off the mask, but then you felt the freedom to be yourself, but sometimes all of the frustrations that you couldn't voice at work maybe manifested differently when you came home?
Yeah, because I think we're conditioned as Black people, but Black women in particular, to be strong at the expense of our own well-being, right? For everybody else but ourselves. And so we can never show anyone that we're sweating, right? So my first manager, when I entered corporate America, he saw that I had on burnt orange fingernail polish, and he made the comment, "You people love your bright colors." And he joked for 15 minutes about how Black people like bright colors. He's on with his day, right? That sticks with us. Whether that happened yesterday, last week, all of those little things are little cuts along the way, and they start to, enter our minds in ways that I don't think we understand the severity of our mental health when we're constantly in these fight or flight situations.
Well, I hadn't heard that one. I've heard different things, but I hadn't heard we like bright colors. Well, I hadn't heard a
Black person say that we like bright colors.
Yeah, but I hadn't heard somebody else say that, and to say it like out loud, like
like a bad thing.
Freely, like you feel free to make a blanket statement like that.
Yeah.
But the people who wear nail polish, I mean, the colors are not muted anyway. Most of them. I mean, you wear it as a form of expression, and all women wear. I mean, I won't say all, but a lot of women.
Right.
Either pedicure or manicure. That's what you do.
He wasn't trying to compliment me, right? He was trying to ask me. So I think those subtle and blatant acts of discrimination in the workplace, many of us feel like we can't say anything or do anything, and that also contributes to the trauma that shows up in other ways.
And it's sad though, because he felt bold enough to say that you felt powerless to give him the same energy, because you would be punished in a different, but not punished as in you're going to be having some type of lash or whatever, but you'll be punished professionally. You could be frozen out from the majority. And so you can't respond in a way, what did you do when he said it? Did you laugh it off, or did you just kind of not say anything? How did you respond?
I was shocked, actually. And I think our kind of trauma response is to laugh it off, right? Because everybody else is laughing. He didn't just say it to me. There were other people around, but I was the person in the office in a professional role. So I just laughed it off. And I often think about that time in my career, like, I wish I would have said something. I wish I knew that I could, right? And part of Right Within is saying we can create boundaries. We can show up for ourselves in these ways, and that we have to try to create a new paradigm, a new narrative to where people don't think that they can just say these things to us, right? And that it just goes unchecked. And so I would go on for the rest of my career not feeling like I had any agency, that I had to listen to Tom say the thing, right? And then everybody laugh. And so, that is traumatizing. And I think we begin to normalize it. And that's part of writing the book. Let's not normalize discrimination.
Okay. Now, did he say this in front of other people, or was you one-on-one?
He did. And that was just one thing. It was something every day, he would say, but that was the beginning of an everyday occurrence of things like that I just had to learn to normalize and just say, oh, that's just Chad being Chad, right? But never having.
And often that's what happens. People will say, well, you know how Chad is, or they'll push the energy back to you and say something like, you shouldn't be so sensitive. Or or if you say something, now people think of you as that angry Black woman. I mean, my dissertation, I said this a few times, is my dissertation for my doctorate program was the angry Black woman syndrome and how it affects African-American women who are leaders, especially corporate leaders. And often you can't respond to something like that because every stereotype about Black women is going to be applied to you in that moment. And often you feel like you're not going to be able to move up, or you're not going to be able to find a coach or a mentor because you always feel different.
Yep, absolutely.
And some things are not like overt like that. You know, I've been an entrepreneur for many years, and I made the decision because I didn't want to deal with racism in the workplace. So it's been years, decades. But my daughter is in corporate, and the company that she left, and this isn't why she left, but the company she left, they would have, you know, the people who were on her team would go out for coffee, but they never invited her out for coffee. You know, that's how the relationships are formed, and that's how people end up moving up and getting promotions and that. And if you get left out of the social stuff that's happening, then that's another way that you're dealing with it too. It's not them saying something to you, is being excluded.
Absolutely.
That happens as well.
Absolutely. All of it, right? So we at different intersections every single day. It might be the coffee, it might be the lunches, it might be the happy hours, it might be promotions, hiring. We're just cut out of these situations. And oftentimes we think it's us when we know that it's the system, right? And it's, what do we need to do? Even if those things don't change, how do we find healing? How do we find freedom, essentially, from these systems so that they don't make us question, so that we don't have this imposter syndrome? Because a lot of it is nothing that we did. It's the system at hand and creating accountability. We can't have an equitable workplace with no accountability. Tom can't keep being Tom if we want equality, right? That's just
right.
Now, what advice would you give people in terms of what do you think the best approach is? Because clearly you have to pick your battle. So, because you don't want to be in a daily, daily dust up with people. So what would you say the best approaches, or some of the best, probably not one approach, but what's some of the good approaches to addressing it without jeopardizing your own position, advancement, or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that the book has a lot of different options and ways, because many of us have different reasons why we're at a place, right? And so another thing is to say, remind ourselves that we have options. I think sometimes as Black women, we have like advanced degrees and trying to make every single thing work. And some things are not meant to work, right? These workplaces, some of them are never going to promote us. They're never going to see us from a humanity type of lens. And so let's take our talent somewhere else, right? And I think sometimes that's fear that stifles us in many situations. And sometimes we're participating in our own oppression by staying in these spaces. And so what would it look like if we actually maybe had a conversation with Chad when he says it? So I often think about not just the nail polish, but other things that happened in my career. What would I have done if I showed up for myself, right? One tool that I have inside the book is say what you mean without saying it mean. How do we create boundaries in the workplace so that people know and they're used to hearing it? But I used to be so upset when I'd go home and I'd be like, man, I can't believe so-and-so said that. And then I had to sit with myself. You never told them what good looked like to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think part of that is creating that space again for us to show up for ourselves in saying what we mean without saying it mean, just like other people can show up and say what they need to say. What does that look like for us? But then there's also tools in the book for our managers and leaders on how to remove barriers instead of creating more for women that look like us.
I don't want to play devil's advocate, but I want to ask it in a different way. Have you experienced where, and being former military, I'm retired Army, I saw it a lot myself with both Black men and Black women, especially when they were very young in their careers, where they were expecting the microaggressions, they were expecting the racism. And because of that, they often gave a negative energy because they thought that every time somebody said something to them, that it was because they were Black. I had a soldier who he was getting ready for a board and he had a do-rag on his head in his uniform. And you don't wear scarves or anything like that. A uniform is supposed to be a uniform. And we told him, you need to take that off. And the first thing out of his mouth was, yeah, they don't like it when black people do things like that. And I'm like, we have to kick everybody out the room. And it's like, no, you're not going to bring that here. You were wrong. You weren't in the right uniform. This had nothing to do with you being Black and Black men wearing do-rags. You were just wrong in that situation. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, do you sometimes see where maybe they're under the impression that they're going to receive this, and even if it's not meant that way, or maybe the person's not a racist, maybe they're just a butthole, to anybody. Do you see maybe that negative expectation?
Absolutely. And it's something that I write about in Right Within, saying that some of us have been so traumatized in many situations that we expect these things. So even if we do get the good job, we're taking that baggage from past experiences or what somebody told you, and then you're not starting with a fresh slate. And so part of the healing, part of the freedom is saying, wow, being able to recognize that it might just be someone who's a jerk, right? It has nothing to do with race, but let's start over. We can't just assume that, every white manager is out to get us, right? We have, that's part of trauma responses, thinking that that's the case. And so we also have to unpack some of the things that we're going through so that we can experience joy in our situations. And I talk about therapy as a mode of kind of unpacking things, because I think some of our childhood experiences, some, teenager, they dictate kind of how we show up in other ways. And so I think it's really important to be able to have like a fresh, clear lens. Like if you were in a toxic workplace at one point, doesn't mean that that's going to be your likelihood for the rest of your life, but you have to be healed in a sense to even be able to understand the differences and the nuances, I think, of the workplace. So
do you think this happens more I'm wondering if people at different levels get different forms of racism? I mean, like people who, it seems like it's happening more so as people are getting advanced degrees and their credentials are their resumes are just amazing, and they're really competitive, and they're butting heads with people who they may be more credentialed than. They're competing for jobs with people who really aren't at their level, but the competition is fierce, more so, than it was in the past.
Absolutely. I think, it's said that Black women are the most educated group in the country right now. So of course there are people who are not happy about that. And but with that said, there's only 1.4% of Black women in the C-suite. That doesn't make any sense to me, right? Mm-hmm. So there is some level of trying to keep us down in a sense, right? And so I think it's really important that we have tools like self-advocacy. We leave spaces when they're not serving us. We have all those sorts of things. I had a woman who had wrote me, and she had stayed at one particular company for like 15 years, and she kept going up for promotion, and they kept, kind of saying, no, it's not your time, and all those sorts of things. Those are the type of traumas that we hold on to, and we keep thinking that we're not good enough, right? But had we gone across the street, we would have had a better experience, right? We might have had a career that could have served us. But I think this loyalty that we have to some of these bad companies is really hurting and harming our health going forward.
No, you're absolutely right. I like what you said there. Often we have loyalty to bad companies, or we feel stuck. Like you said, we don't feel like we can go anywhere else because we don't feel that we're good enough. And there's so many layers to that, from having supportive family members, from having friends who aren't trying to pull you down or push you down. I mean, we have friends out there who think it's funny to insult us. And they think, okay, and if we say something back, then we're being sensitive. So the gaslighting is from so many different levels. And you have to really be emotionally healthy in order to recognize that and be able to respond to it. So I think that your book is like required reading for anyone who wants to go into a leadership position, whether it's on a corporate level or even lower management, because it happens on every level.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, now I'm gonna ask Rhonda a question. It's like a cross question, because Rhonda, you spend a lot of your time in the military and government, and is the environment better, the same, worse? How would you describe it?
I think that often people feel like, some people may feel that racism isn't as bad in the military because we all have to work together. But there are microaggressions, and actually sometimes very overt aggressions in the military as well. I had a white officer who asked me if I had a really crappy childhood because I was Black and from the South, and he thought it was okay to say that. So we often see leadership do some of the same things in the military as you would see outside of the military.
Yeah, I just wondered, because I like I say, I haven't been in any of them. I just couldn't put myself through that. I couldn't give my talent to interracial type situation. I just wouldn't. And I thought it was better for me. Now, I had other challenges. Being an entrepreneur is challenging, but one thing I haven't had to deal with is racism in the workplace, because if I hire somebody, they better do what I tell them. I don't care what color they are.
Well, see, here's the thing, as many people as we see who are racist, there are some people, like we were saying earlier, who are just buttholes. But then there are other people who are and then there are other people who are very, very supportive, no matter what race they are. I mean, I think
true too.
A lot of it is just having that emotional intelligence and that healing that we talked about, that healing from that trauma, to be able to recognize which situations you're in. There are some people who will pretend to be supportive when they're actually wolves in sheep's clothing. And then there are some people who, they might just really be buttholes, but if you talk to them and get to know them, I was actually talking with the director today. He said, he was telling another coworker, when Rhonda first met me, she thought I was the biggest butthole, but, and I really did. I didn't know he knew that I thought he was a butthole, but he knew. But he actually is a very supportive person. If I come in and say I need something, he'll find the answer for me. So sometimes we just have to be able to break through those walls and get to know the person and know who they really are.
Yeah, some things are personal and some things aren't personal. And it's, it's sometimes it's hard to navigate all of that. Now, your book, The Memo, what was that encompassing? What did you cover in that book?
So yeah, the memo, my first book, that was about our experiences in the workplace. So it's, once you talked about the experiences, how do you heal from them, was the second book. But I think the business books were written about, white people, dominant culture, and it really left us out of the equation in terms of our experiences aren't the same even as other women, right? And so I talked office politics, salary negotiation, how you build your network. You all, were talking about that earlier, how important that is. And I think some of us don't have those rules of engagement when we start in school, because some of us are the first generation college student, whereas some of our counterparts, they were told, they got the blueprint. And so the memo really is the guide to say, here are the things that I wish somebody would have told me when I entered into this place.
And some of it too, in the workplace, when you go certain places, there's a certain aura of presumption of leadership with white males that they get. You might go somewhere and the Black woman might actually be the one in charge, but people will assume it's someone else. And so that's another, I guess, I don't know if that's a microaggression. I don't know what that's called, but that's
because they don't see us as the leader, right?
Right.
When I was in corporate America, there were many times where I was at exclusive dinners and they thought I was the help, right? So just, like 1930s, these are like, it's still happening, people's mindset. And, another thing in the memo that I talk about is like happy hours, all those sorts of things that sometimes we're like, oh, we don't want to go to them. But to your point, that's where some of the movers and the shakers are, right? So strategizing, and I think, having that strategy is really, really important.
So you have a podcast called Secure the Seat.
Yes.
And are these some of the subjects that you discuss in the podcast?
Yes, every week on Secure the Seat, we talk about these same topics. Just how do we navigate the workplace? How do we create that space for ourselves and have a community where we can talk about it so you don't feel like you're suffering in silence, but you're actually taking the power back and, charting a new path for yourself.
I think that's awesome because there are so many leaders out there who feel like they're on a hill by themselves. I wish I had listened to this podcast when I was still in the military. I probably would have put up with them for a little bit longer. I said, I'm ready to go.
Had I had some.
Yes. So
And
how can people
some
find
of
the
it too,
podcast?
in the workplace, people have to deal with security issues because if they've been at somewhere 10 years or whatever, they have, seniority, they have a certain amount of vacation and sick leave built up. They're vested in their 401k, things like that people have to consider. And then sometimes they end up putting up with things that they may or may not like. It's a lot of variables to consider. Then once you get in corporate, you get a mortgage and a car note, and then it's hard to, you got bills. So that was another reason why I didn't do it, because I said, once I get in there, if I get a mortgage and a car note, it'd be hard for me to leave. So I said, let me just go for it. And at 25, I just went for it. That's when you don't have any fear. So
your book is going to be released on October 18th?
Yes, so it's paperback is available. It's on pre-order right now. So definitely go ahead and pre-order that. And again, thank you so much for your platform, sharing it with me.
And on your podcast, where can people listen to that? What platforms are you on for Secure? It's called Secure the Seat. And do you have a copy of your book? That's what I want to ask. Do you have a copy of your book with you that we can see the cover?
You know what? Let me see if I have. I should. Oh, well, this is a different cover, but it's a yellow cover. But this is my copy.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering because I saw that book when you held it up, but then when I posted your website, the book looked different. I was like, did I miss something?
So it's a yellow cover, but yes, right within. You can go to my website, mindaharts.com, and you can find all the podcast information and sign up for the newsletter.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to help people navigate corporate America and stay, sane and calm and at peace, but still advancing. It's a balancing act.
We still want our money and all the things. So
yes, give me all the things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Great evening. Okay, our next guest is an artist, and he has a book that he produced that's, and we gave it away. We have the advanced reading copy. It was an illustrated Black history book, and all the illustrations were ones that he did himself. And he kind of walks us through the history of the last 100 years or so, I want to say. But anyway, our guest is George McCalman, and welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Gwen. How are you doing?
Doing great. Did you have a copy of your book with you?
It's attached to my hip everywhere
Okay.
I go.
Okay. It's beautiful, and that's a hardcover.
It is hardcover.
Yeah, it is thick because we had the advanced reading copy, and that's always in paperback.
Yes,
but it's very, very, very nicely done. Very
juicy color.
So, what years does it cover? In terms of the people in there?
All 400 years of American history.
Oh, okay, all 400. Okay, so who's the earliest person that you cover in terms of the illustration?
Probably Jordan Anderson. Jordan Anderson.
Okay, and enlighten our audience about who Jordan Anderson.
Jordan Anderson was an enslaved man who sought his own freedom and moved north and discovered that his enslaver had come looking for him. And he crafted a letter that had basically all the swagger of a rapper. And basically put this idiot in his place. And it's just like a masterclass of words and writing and intention. And it basically showed the agency. You know, I'm just so tired of this story about, you know, Black people not having our own agency all throughout enslavement. And this is just, it's such a piece of swagger that it felt like a completely different kind of story than what we are used to hearing about how Black people and how we as a people comported ourselves during that period of time.
So what made you take on this monumental project?
Because this book did not exist. That's basically it. And I found that too many people were too casual and cavalier about it. And I was just kind of like, no, not, no. It's basically like, no, I'm doing this and I need to do it. When I did the original portrait series 6 years ago, several people asked me if I was going to make a book of it. And I responded that I thought and assumed that the book already existed, that there are already books that you could buy about our history that that would be readily accessible. And what I found is that outside of children's books and academic and historical tellings, there was nothing. And I just got angry. I just got angry. It was just another thing that we as Americans just assume is attended to. You know, I know people love saying, I can't believe that it's 2022 and we're doing X, Y, Z, but it's so common, it's so everyday. There's so many things that we take for granted that we think are in place, both Black and white people and everyone in between. And I was like, no, we can't be cavalier about this. This is our history, it's American history. More people should know it, more people should have access to it. And there's really no reason for this not to exist. And because I have a background in publishing, I knew I could take on the art, the design. I am the writer of the book. I am the artist of the book, and I'm also the designer of the book, which means that I had creative control over how it looked.
Right.
Wow, so you wrote all of the biographies the story, the narrative for each person. You
So
wrote all of those yourself?
Yes, I have my co-writer and I, April Reynolds, who is a brilliant writer. That we basically didn't want to tell Wikipedia entries. We didn't want to tell biographies. We wanted to tell stories.
Okay.
That basically following the oral tradition of the Black diaspora of passing information down to each other. And I wanted to basically embrace the Sankofa, embrace the past, present, and future, that this just wasn't about the trauma of the Black community, which is there in the telling, but I also wanted to tell the moments of accomplishment all throughout the complexity of our history in this country. I just wanted to embrace and celebrate. And this book is deliberately designed and looks celebratory. I didn't want it to be monochromatic. I didn't want it to just be a series of colors. I didn't want the whole thing to look the same. Every portrait is rendered in a completely different style. I wanted to individualize all of the people and really kind of show the individuality of each person and show that there was there was a person. There's a human being behind all of these accomplishments. It's not just statistics of she did this and she did that and she's the first Black woman and he's the first Black man. It's like, that was kind of secondary for me. I wanted to show the road to the accomplishment.
So how do you plan such a monumental task? I mean, because this is a huge book.
Yeah. How many pages are in your book? How many pages? It looks like a 500-page book.
It's the paper. The paper is really.
Okay.
No, it's thick.
Because of the art. Okay.
Thick and juicy.
Okay.
Nice. So yeah, how do you plan something like this? And did the number of people that you profiled, did the number grow, or did you have to shrink it?
I had to shrink it.
I knew you were going to say that.
I had to shrink because there were too many people that I was interested in. Like I had an initial list and it grew, it kept growing because I would talk to people and they'd be like, what about this? And don't forget this person and da, da, da. And I had 500 names and I had to winnow it down. You know, my publisher and I, we talked about it and they left it to me. This whole book is me. Like, if you have any issues with it, it's me. Like, I was the person who decided the names, and there's a bias in here. There's several biases that I'm actually really proud of. There are more women in the book than men. I come from a matriarchy, and my family is smart, amazing, bossy Black women telling us what to do and us benefiting from their smarts. And so I wanted to honor even the women alongside. There are a lot of men who are parts of the movements in our community, and I was more interested in their contemporaries, their wives, their accompaniments, the folks who were alongside them. You know, Marcus Garvey's not in the book, but his first wife, Amy Ashwood Garvey, is, because I think she's actually more interesting than Marcus Garvey, and is a really accomplished, smart, worldly woman, traveled everywhere. She was incredible. And I wanted to kind of focus on who are the people alongside these movements? Who are the women of the Black Panther Party? You know, I wanted to know, because those are the women who are actually doing all the work. And so I wanted to make sure that I was representing that perspective. And I didn't want to just give the top 10 or top 15 people. There are a lot of people who people would be surprised are not in the book.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who you will be surprised that they are
in the book. You know, we've talked about this on the show before, how during Black History Month, they always do the same 5 people biographies. I mean,
and it makes me insane. It makes me insane.
There's millions, you know, over 400 years.
Millions.
There has to be thousands at least, you know, not the same 5 people.
Yes.
And so
and this book was my response to that too. I was just kind of tired of the same 5 to 10 people, because Black History Month should be an opportunity to tell all the stories that are not told. And it's the same stories told every year.
Every year.
And this is why people know more about one than they do the other. That's why not as many people know about or I'm sorry, you know, when it comes to the hair. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting names all of a sudden.
The Bronner brothers.
Well, no, the Bronner brothers, but I'm going even further back than that. I'm talking about
well, you're talking about Madam C.J. Walker.
Thank you. I'm having a brain fart. Thank you. But you know, people know more about Madam C.J. Walker, and they don't know about who actually was the person who trained Madam C.J. Walker, who was also a Black millionairess. You know, and a lot of people didn't know about her until the movie, and then the movie actually pitted them against each other.
Yeah,
like they were fighting with each other.
I didn't like them.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about the movie.
Yeah.
It did. You know, they do these depictions, and
yes,
they usually are off somewhere, somehow.
There's always something.
You know, there's no. It's just not. It's something missing, or something they added that didn't need to be added, or they don't show the person in the best light. That doesn't mean you have to show that, make them portrayed as perfect. They're not. But you know, if you're gonna do a person, do the highlights, and at least make them look 3-dimensional and not 1-dimensional.
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
And so you don't really get to know. Now, I'm going to ask you: Is Emmett Till in your book?
Emmett Till is not in the book,
because they're doing another movie on Emmett Till, and I'm wondering, are they doing all these movies because they didn't talk about him when it would have mattered? You know what I mean? I mean, not that it doesn't matter, but you know what I'm saying? They didn't do anything when they could have prosecuted the people who did it.
Right.
you know,
And,
and
and, the,
now
and, the,
it's
and the
like,
woman is still, she's still running free
right,
out in the world.
right.
And all I
So
want
why
to
do
know
they
is
keep doing it?
when this woman is going to be arrested for killing this man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
that's all I want to know.
yeah. So why continue? I'm not gonna go see the next one. I saw the one that was on TV a year or so ago, the series they had. I saw that. And you know, it's gut wrenching, of course, but you know, the whole thing was just horrific. But
Christine, I'm not moved to see the new Will Smith movie, and it's not even about the slap.
now what is it? I know we get kind of a little bit off
I know
topic,
we're
but
getting off
not totally
topic a
off
little
topic
bit.
because your book is about Black people. So is
Yeah.
Will Smith in the book?
Will Smith is definitely not in
Not in the book. Okay, I can.
No, and not because of any of the current context of this, but I wasn't interested in celebrities. There's not that many
Right.
celebrities in there. And even the folk, like my criteria for even having sports folks in there, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's is the book is in alphabetical order, and there are 5 essays that break the book up. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is in the book not because of his sports accomplishments,
Yes,
because of his writing accomplishments. People don't know that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a scholar. And what I wanted to show was the complexity and depth of, we tend to kind of characterize and categorize people. And what I know about so many Black people, including me, is that we are multifaceted and gifted. I'm a polymath. I do a lot of things well. I'm a writer, I'm a professor of graphic design, I'm an artist, I'm a graphic designer. I do a lot of things. I've worked hard to be good. This is not hubris saying that, but I do a lot of things. And I was interested in the people who also do a lot of things well, that are gifted in unexpected ways.
Well, you know, you're talking to 2 people who are gifted in multiple things. So we can relate to what you're saying.
And so I wanted to celebrate that. Colin Kaepernick is in the book, not because of his accomplishments as a footballer, but for how he changed the game.
I thought you were going to say it's because you 2 had the same afro.
So I was really looking for, and even the people who are well known in the book, I have them in there because of some kind of unexpected story that I didn't know about them before. I wanted to show folks in a different light and to tell stories about them outside of the statistics of their accomplishments. Like I wanted Althea Gibson to be there, not Arthur Ashe, because Arthur Ashe is still like, he's still spoken about as though he was the only person, the only Black person breaking the barrier of tennis. And Althea does not get enough play. And so I wanted to have her in there and tell her story instead.
I'm already in love with this book. And I love the fact that you are highlighting people who have made an impact on our history, not because of they're popular, but because of what they actually did. And so I appreciate that a lot. And I'm glad you're holding up the cover so we can see it, because people were asking, what was the name of the book again?
Illustrated Black History, honoring the iconic and the unseen.
The book is out at a good time too, because it will make a great Christmas gift or holiday gift, Kwanzaa or any holiday gift for people who have family members or themselves that like history. And it's like it's a coffee table book, really.
It's actually, I think it's less about history and it's more about culture. And we don't always equate the two.
Okay.
But one of the things that I was thinking about as I was researching and working on this book for 4 years was that for such a small percentage of the population, we as a Black culture dominate American culture. We have defined and redefined, and our creative expressiveness has put this country on the map. Our labor made it a superpower, and our expressiveness has made us, we define culture here. And for me, what I wanted to show was that history didn't have to be intimidating, that there's something to support in all of the hardships that our forebearers and our current legends are undertaking, because they're fighting on a daily basis. As we all know, you are just fighting being a Black person in this country on a regular basis. And I didn't want it to just be about the intensity of our history. I wanted to honor the fact that these are people who have created the fabric of what we all take for granted in American culture.
So show us a couple of the pictures from the book, and like the people that you want people to know about that they probably don't know about. And
so the first thing I want to show you,
one or two, but show it to me.
First of all, I'm going to open up to the table of contents, which at the beginning of the book tells you everything that's going to be inside the book. It's inside every single book. The entire table of contents is illustrated.
Oh, that's
awesome. Wow.
And what I wanted to do was basically allow people to have a sense of who each person was before they started reading about them.
Okay.
Because the truth is that most people don't know a lot of the people who are in this book. And I didn't want to make it a test.
Okay.
For you to figure out who was who and what they did. And I wanted it to be accessible. So this was a decision that I made. And these are our 5 essayists.
Okay.
And then you start breaking into it. And I have the introduction where I have people who are not in the book. I basically wanted to take a few people who people were like, why isn't Malcolm X in the book? Why isn't Martin in the book? Why isn't Harriet Tubman in the book? And I was like, well, in my introduction, I explain why Harriet Tubman is not in the book, is that she is one of many people that people feel like they already know. And I wanted to focus on some of the folks that actually don't get the shine that they deserve. And so I have Vice President Kamala Harris and words from her original speech. And then you start getting into the pioneers.
So how do you have a group? You said the alphabet, it's in alphabetical order.
It's in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. By last name.
By last name, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the other thing that I wanted to do, because so much of our history has been erased, there were a lot of people in the book that I decided to include that had no photographic reference. And so how do you include so many of our forebearers when there's nothing to create from? And what I wanted to do was basically create these silhouettes that allowed. So this is the gentleman, Cato Alexander, who invented the cocktail. Something that we all take for granted, that's all part of the strata. It was created by a Black man who had a robust business, who basically just, defined a lot of this kind of nighttime culture that we all take for granted.
Now, how did you, the people who are little known, how did you just find them, or did you search for people? How did you decide who to include that's not normally included, and how did you happen upon them and get the information? Was it something you had been doing like over years, collecting the information, and then that was how it transpired?
Yes, and I also hired a fact checker who basically helped compile a lot of the information. I spoke with a few African-American studies professors. I spoke to Josh Myers of Howard University early in the process. His eye was on my list. Professor Anyabwile Love of PhD, who was, I spoke to quite a few professors who are already immersed in African American studies, and I am not a historian, so I never want to represent that this comes from that academic background, that I'm an artist and a writer who has been a reporter for years. I know how to research, I know how to write. So this process is just it's baked in. It's not something I had to learn how to do. It's something I've been doing. I've been in the publishing industry for 25 years now. And so I knew the process, the discipline of the process of researching information, putting it together, and creating something that the average person can sit and read.
Where are you located?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah, but I grew up in New York. I grew up in Brooklyn, East Flatbush.
Okay.
And I'm originally from the Caribbean. I'm from the country of Grenada.
From one extreme to another extreme to another
Right.
extreme.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, that's your work is just is so beautiful, the depth of it, and
Thank
just
you.
the creativity and the temerity, if I want to use that word, because lots of times people, when you take on a big task like this, you get naysayers. A lot of times people can't see your vision too.
Yes.
They can't, it's hard to explain to people what your vision is until they actually see the end result.
Right. Right. And I've done a few interviews, and I will tell you, a majority of the questions I get from Black people, our people, is, how did you do this? How did you do this? Who let you get away with this? And it is my background, basically, as an island person. I was like, I'm not asking for anyone's permission to do this.
No.
And I know there are going to be a lot of people who, and there were along the way, it was a saga behind the scenes to get this book made. And there were a lot of people, both Black and white, who did not want me to do this. And I learned a kind of new kind of tenacity, that is the right word. And I had to tune out. I had a core group of people, a Black community that was really, that encouraged me and made sure that I stayed on track. So I was never working alone. And that is, I think I would have given up, quite honestly, if it was just me working on it. But I had just a clarity around it the whole time. I was like, this, and it was a purpose.
It was a work of love the entire time.
And it was a work of love for my community. It was a work of love because this book didn't exist. And it was a work of love because our community deserves this book.
Now, did you have challenges getting signed with a publisher?
Initially, so I'll tell you how it happened, because I had this book deal. I've been asked a few times if 2020 is the reason that I got this book deal. And the truth is, I had this book deal even before the 1619 project came out. Like, when there was no outside influence for the making of this book. There's no body of work that I was like, ooh, they're doing it, and let me do it too. So that's like the first thing I need to say is, like, there was nothing when I started this project. And so I wasn't inspired by anyone else. I was inspired by the fact that I wanted and needed to do this. And I initially, I'm in the publishing world. So I reached out to a few publishers, and I would tell you, not surprisingly, they were just kind of like, these white publishers, that they genuinely do not care about this. Right. And that's what I had to learn all over again, to really get angry, to get clear that I was going to make this. I'd sent out a few initial, and, I got a lot of white lady responses. It's like, oh, we need to think about this, and we need to see. And we're not sure how this will sell, and let me get back to you. La da dee, la da da. And I was just kind of like, that's what I was expecting, number one. And I see that I need to actually formalize this a little bit more. And a friend of mine introduced me to an agent. And I remember getting on the phone with her and saying, I'm really angry about this. And I believe this exists. And she's from Boston, and we are East Coast people. We just speak that direct language. And she said, we're gonna get this in. If you get me the outline, I will have this book sold. And it was the year that the museums in Montgomery, the Lynching Memorial and the Business of Slavery Museum, opened. And I took a road trip with a friend of mine from Atlanta down to see it. And those two museums totally changed my perspective on how serious this was for me to do. I walked out of that experience with a purpose. I was so committed to this idea. And so I put it together. And then what ended up happening is that 6 publishers fought over the book.
Nice.
Wow, that's wonderful. Now we have some questions from our viewers.
Yes.
Someone asked, how long did it take? And I think you mentioned that already.
From the beginning, the original project that I did was a daily painting exercise. And I painted 29, because it was a leap year of February, 29 portraits. And some of the original portraits are in this book. Basically any black and white portrait that you see is from the original series 6 years ago. And then the book itself took 4 years. So 6 years total.
Okay. And then the person who won the advanced reading copy, Mary Evans, asked, why did you choose to have the full page Ruth E. Carter spread?
So there are several portraits in the book that take up 2 pages. There's some of them where I show Langston Hughes and James Baldwin, where I have 2 portraits of them, where I show them as young men and then older. And I wanted to show kind of the range. And there's some people like Ruth Carter that I just wanted to take up the entire spread. And I wanted, frankly, everybody to turn the book around, to be utilizing it fully. And this is my background as a magazine designer. People tend to sit with books and read them a specific way. And what I wanted you to do was have a physical experience with it, where you have to turn the book around. And there are a few portraits like that, where you have to look at someone. Colin Kaepernick is also situated in that way. There are a couple of them where I wanted to show the bigness of them.
I like that, the bigness of them. Yeah, I learned a lot about Colin Kaepernick when he did his movie. Just his views on football and his tenacity of getting into the sport. And I really felt like he was an inspiration. I mean, even it wasn't even so much about football, it's just about him having the tenacity to continue to push for football, even when it seemed like football didn't want him. Oh, that's beautiful.
This is Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes.
And I wanted to show her just taking up, like her with her bullhorn, rallying the people. There were a few that I felt just having them on a full page was not enough. I wanted to show like
bigger
the full, yes.
See, that's the artist in you, that you thought about people turning the book around and all that.
That's the graphic designer in me. Like, as the designer of the book, I wanted people to have an emotional experience.
Right. Now we have one last question, because we're at the end of our time. Someone asked about getting the book in schools. Are you pursuing that?
Well, I'm already getting inquiries about that. Like, I just wanted to this book is designed basically to be everywhere. I want it in institutions. I want to be in libraries. I want to be in schools. colleges, everyday people. I've been saying continually, I want this book to be in every home in America, because there's no reason that it shouldn't be. And the Black community is going to be the bedrock of any success that this book has. But in the week that it's been out exactly a week, I have not seen any, and a lot of people have bought this book already. I have not seen anyone buy one copy.
Okay.
And you were saying earlier about Christmas and Kwanzaa, and I'm like, nope, get into it. You're buying multiple copies now, because everyone needs it as a gift right now. This is not something that it's not a gift to just like leave on the coffee table and feel good
It's not
about.
a coffee table book. This is a
This is an
textbook.
It's a keepsake. So that's why I said it would make a great
thing.
gift.
Everyone thinks that they're getting this book to have on their coffee table, and then they open it and I see the responses to it. Everyone's like, oh, there's a lot to read, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to see, and my senses are being stimulated because every page I turn is different. And there's nothing to get bored with in this book. You will not be bored.
Right, especially because there are people, it's not the same 5 people. So we talked about that earlier. Well, George, we're at the end of our time, and
It's
congratulations.
so good to wrap with you.
Oh, thank you.
And Rhonda, it's so good to talk to you.
It was great talking with you as well. Thank you for this gift to our community. And that's exactly what it is.
Thank you for receiving it. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have a great evening.
Okay. Bye.
Good night. Okay, that was George McCalman and his illustrated Black History book, which is put it on your list because it makes a great holiday gift. So we have our final guest coming on, and some of you may know her but not know her. And I say that because her name is Lisa McNair, and she is famous through her sister who died. And some of you may be, well, all of our audience is aware of the Birmingham church bombing that took place in the 60s. I forgot exactly what year it was, but I think it was 63, or it might have been 64. But Lisa McNair is the sister of one of the young girls who passed away in that horrible bombing. And Spike Lee did a movie about it called 4 Little Girls. If you all want to learn more about it, for those who may not know. And also The Eyes on the Prize, the series, it was a series narrated by Julian Bond, I think, narrated that series. And it's excellent if you want to learn history. At any rate, Lisa has written a book called Dear Denise, Letters to the Sister I Never Knew. And it's honoring her sister, Denise McNair. So welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Now, you wrote this, you were born after your sister passed away, so you never knew your sister. And just tell us about growing up in your family and your community, and how that being part of history, being a part of such a crucible in American history and civil rights history, how that affected you and your family.
Well, it was always a part of my life. You know, I was born almost exactly a year from the day she was killed. My parents had tried to have other children. She was 11 when she was murdered, and they tried to have other children all that time, but they'd never been able to carry to term. So it, like someone said one time, we live parallel lives, our family and Denise. So her death is just, you know, etched on who we are as people here in America.
That's for sure. That's amazing. So you were like a miracle baby, I guess.
Yeah.
So, how old do you think you were when it really sank in who your sister was, and also your role as, maybe not role isn't the right word, but knowing, finding out that you were a miracle baby? I mean, when did all of this start to sink in that there's something special going on with your family?
Well, I think it took time, over time. I often asked, when did I know that Denise was killed? I've always known that. And I don't recall a time when anybody sat me down and told me that. I believe that, you know how adults are. I'm sure people talked about it and said, you know, that's Maxine McNair. When people would see her with me, her daughter was killed in the bombing, or this is my friend Maxine, her daughter was killed in the bombing, and this is her miracle baby. We've been praying for her to have a baby, and it's had a baby almost exactly a year, and this is Lisa. Because so I think all that happened, and I just picked it up because I do remember people would just like pick me up all the time and, you know, touch me and hug me, and then some people were obnoxious. I do remember, like, you know, back in the day, you had the little panties with the ruffles on them, and they would raise your dress up and look and say, "Oh, get you," kind of thing. You're like, "Don't be looking at my underwear." You know, I think I hit a couple of people, and mom wasn't really happy about that, but I was like, they were just intrusive. But I think I've just always known that, but the other stuff kind of just came over time, you know, because the anniversary of the bombing was the 15th, and then 4 days later is my birthday every year. And then one day I remember thinking, whoa, wait a minute, that was almost a year. And I came right behind. And so then there was the conversation about, well, why didn't y'all have any more kids? And then I found out that she had tried to have other kids, but she didn't. So things came, you know, as a revelation over time, but it was weird growing up like that, because I mean, you go to the store to write a check at the grocery store, and they find out my mom gives her driver's license, they find out who you are, so people freak out, and they find out who you are. I even have people now, when I tell them who I am, they just literally bust out in tears crying. And I think that goes to saying, you know, what a horrible thing happened, and that everybody could relate to how egregious killing children was, in
Absolutely.
Black and white.
Yes.
Did you ever feel that you had a responsibility to, you know, do something special because of who your sister was?
I don't think early on, but I do now, particularly since I started being the main spokesperson for the family in 2012, and traveling and speaking to groups all over the country. It's kind of, you know, I want to represent my mom and dad well. I want to represent Denise well, and I want to be able to do that. And do it with honor and respect. So yeah, I do feel that way.
So you have a copy of the book?
I do have a copy of the book.
Okay. And that's your sister there.
Yeah.
Holding a doll.
Beautiful picture.
Thank you. Yeah, this was my dad's favorite picture of her. So
okay.
He loved that picture. He shot it. I should take the blur off then, so you can see
if
it
you
better.
Moved it to the, okay, there you go. Yes.
Yeah. And then, okay, don't look at the background. I didn't make my bed. Anyway,
no, we can't see all that. No.
My bed's not made up either. I'm just not in my room. You be all right.
But my dad was a professional photographer, so he was very well known here in Birmingham. Kind of the Black people's photographer. And then after Denise happened, the death of Denise happened, he became the photographer for everybody in Birmingham. So she had a little camera, what they called a brownie cameras. It must be a little camera you get kids back in the day. And he shot that with the brownie camera. And he wasn't sure that it was going to come out, and he didn't even develop it until she died. And that's when he found out what a jewel he had in that image. So when I thought about writing the book, at first I was gonna I had my friend who's a professional photographer come, and I had my face made up, and we spent a whole day shooting pictures of me, and I had a big picture of her. So I was sitting down pretending to write a letter with her looking over me, and none of them came out right, and it just didn't work. Nothing worked. And then I looked over at the picture, and I was like, no, the cover of this book should be her, and it should be that picture that Daddy loved of her. So that's how
Yeah.
we came up with it.
So how old was she in that picture? Do you know?
Just about 11.
Oh, so it was
That was shortly before she was killed.
He was killed.
Mm.
Oh boy. So the book is letters that you've written to her. Now, did you start writing these when you were young and just kept going, or did you do that for this particular project?
I did it for this particular project. I'd always wanted to write about my life because growing up as that first generation, able to move freely in this country after segregation had ended, it was just very different and very challenging. And there were some things I always wanted to write about because I never heard anybody talking about it. And some of the things were tough and they were hard. And so I always, since I was 14, wanted to write the book. But I didn't start putting pen to paper till 06. And then I was just going to write a memoir. And I got stuck and I couldn't figure out how to do it, and the flow wouldn't work, and it just seemed cumbersome to try to write a chronological book of your life. It's not as easy as you think it would be. And then I got two great pieces of advice. One was just start writing, put it all down. We got Word now, we can move it around and make it in chronological order. But the second was from a friend of mine. She said, why don't you just write it in letters to Denise? You know, you didn't know Denise, and you would be telling her anything and everything. And it was like a light bulb came on. And so that's when I wrote the book and to her. And so all the letters are as though we are having, though I'm having a one-way conversation with the sister I never knew.
Did you find yourself doing that as you got older? You know, maybe just talking or thinking of the sister you never knew?
Yeah, sometimes I would say things and I would be like, why are you not here? This was a bad day, or this is a tough day, or I really wish you were here because I just miss not having a big sister. So.
And I'm sure that writing the book was therapeutic for you because you were able to put all of these thoughts onto paper.
Yes, very much so.
So would you read one of the portion of one of the letters?
So I know you can ask me to do that.
You knew or you didn't know?
I didn't know. I should have thought of it.
I didn't know. So I couldn't tell you. I just spur of the moment. I said, well, you know, it would be nice to just hear a little bit.
I'm going to get my copy where I've scratched through it. So keep talking.
Okay. All right. But you know, just
one thing you'll know about me. I'm kind of unconventional, and I just say what I think, and I just do stuff. I don't have an ego, so it just you get anything.
That's fine, because we try to on the show. We like to have conversations with the authors that come on, or whoever the guest is. They're not all authors, but we try to keep it conversational, like we're sitting around in our living room just chatting. So, you know, so if you were at my house and you had your book, I would say, well, why don't you read a little bit of one of the letters? Let me hear.
Awesome.
Let me hear how it sounds. Awesome. Just where what you were sharing with her. Since it's not like it's a diary where it's a secret. It's a book where everybody will know. So
yeah. So I've been trying to find what are some key points to read when I meet people. So I basically have called a couple of people who read the book and see what they thought stood out. And this was one piece that several people thought about. So in Birmingham, when Denise was killed, you know, of course, everybody knew our parents and other parents, but for most of the time, Black Americans here in the city, we didn't talk about it. It just was a culture of silence. You didn't hear much from any of the other families, but my dad ended up being the first legislator of color in 1973. And so that kind of put him in the limelight. So anytime there was anything to know about the bombing, he was the one they went to, but you never saw him be emotional about that. I never saw him be emotional about that, even here in the house. So this is something about him that I wrote in the book. So I'm not the best person to read out loud. So if I stumble, y'all know why. This is in chapter 3, the letter number 3. And that letter, the title of that letter is Your Death Left Much Sorrow. So it's likely came to do the book on the movie on the 4 Little Girls. He realized Daddy was a professional photographer and that Mom and Daddy had never thrown any of her things away and given her things away. And he wanted all the pictures he could get of her and stuff. So he said, I'll be back in a couple of weeks and I want you to have it all pulled out for me. And so that was the lead into this.
Okay.
While by this time, things in the house had been moved around quite a bit during the remodels. There were pictures and things of yours in a number of closets all over the house. Mama and I got right on the task we were assigned, pulling pictures and personal effects. It was a sad time. We did have a few moments of laughter. Sorry, y'all. Mama had stories about lots of the things that we found. It was good to do that with her. We had hoped that Daddy would help and be a part of the process. I looked forward to hearing stories from him, but he would always manage to be too busy to help us. It made me and Mama angry that we were doing all the work. One day, when we were going through a particular closet, he was home all day, which was rare. We asked him to please help us. He sat down for a little while and then shortly afterwards got up to leave. I asked him, how could he leave us with all that we had to do? And he yelled back at me, I just can't. He had tears in his eyes. Mama touched my shoulder and told me to leave him alone. That was the first time I had seen him cry over you. He had held all that hurt and pain in for so many years and never dealt with it. I felt so bad for him. I later went into his room and gave him a hug and apologized for fussing at him. It broke my heart to see him like this, but I was glad he was finally grieving. Once the documentary was released, there were many premieres all over the country. Kim and I went to 2 of the premieres, but Mama and Dad went to all of them and cried at every single one. I guess Daddy was finally free to breathe.
Oh, wow. That is so sad and
That is
powerful.
just very heartfelt, and
Yeah.
it just shows you people, they grieve in different ways and sometimes they hold things in. And to have something happen to a family member that's so public. We've all lost people that are close to us, but not at the level that
Right.
your family and the other 3 girls' families experienced.
Right.
So are your parents still living?
No.
They
We
both
lost Mama
passed?
in January. And so,
Of this
it's
year?
funny. Yeah, this year.
Oh,
It's
okay.
funny you're talking about grieving in public. It was my goal when both of them left to be ready and be prepared. And my sister and I talked about it. I said, because we're not going to get to grieve like everybody else, until everybody's gone and the hoopla goes down. So we want it, and I knew that. So I wanted to have everything in place because once it hit, I knew it was just going to be like wildfire. And like when Daddy died, I had somebody writing a press release, and I had a couple of people in the house, close friends with me. The caregiver looked around and she was bringing people in and look at his body. I don't know why the heck that was a thing that she thought was okay, but really died at 3:30, and about 4 something, somebody posted on my Facebook page, I'm so sorry for your loss of your daddy. hadn't had the press release, hadn't sent it out yet, and it was just on from that point on, It worked out a little better for Mama because it was a quiet day and it was just me and Kim in here with her when she passed. So I was able to get, have a few moments before the world descended on that. But yeah, that's been kind of our whole life, just in the public eye, just, whether you want it to be or not.
Wow. Well, Larita asked if it's possible to order the book and get an autographed copy.
Okay. Yes, you can. You have to come to get it through me though, if you want an autograph copy.
Yeah, she's gonna order it from you to get it.
Yeah, because you can order it anywhere. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, anywhere. But in order for me to sign it, I have to mail it to you. So you can email me and I can sign it and mail it to you.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you do speaking engagements, so maybe she can attend one of your speaking engagements that you have coming up. Do you have any coming up?
Cool. Where is she located?
Oh, she's in Georgia, in Savannah.
Okay, we trying to hook up one in Georgia area, in the Atlanta area.
Okay.
But
well, maybe we have to get you out to the DC area.
Yeah, Rhonda, can you put the website in the chat? That you already do it?
Yeah, I believe I did, but I'm going to do it again because there's been a lot of chatting since then.
It's been a lot of comments.
Yeah. My website is www.speaklisa.com.
Yeah, I did have that up. I remember typing that, but I'm doing it again.
Okay. And I need to work on that tomorrow. I'll be home all day. I don't have to go anywhere, all day. It's been a whirlwind ever since it started. And I'm going to try to get the list of where I'll be to my graphic designer so that she can upload that. But I'll be in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on the 25th, all day at Rotary, and then at Ernst and Hadley bookstore. I will be in the Mobile area at, I can't remember, Page and Palette bookstore on November the 3rd. And but I will be in a variety of places, so the dates are still filling up. I have a great friend who works at a college in Pennsylvania, so he is so excited and has been so excited. He has me on a Pennsylvania tour. I will be in Pennsylvania on the 7th through the 15th of November.
Okay.
Summer everywhere. Like, how do you pack and take like one suitcase and be gone 8 days? I don't know how to do that. So
and the weather's dramatically different. You're in Birmingham still?
Yeah, I'm still in Birmingham.
Okay, so yeah, the weather will be different for you.
Yeah, so. That's the guy talking to Colin now. He must not know I'm on a
See, when they call you while you're on the show, I mean they're not watching, so fuss at them.
Yeah, I'm going to fuss at him about that.
Tell him he can watch the replay because all of our shows are archived. So
good,
go to the YouTube
and he will
channel
do that as well.
And he can watch it. Now, your sister was the youngest of the 4 that were killed. And the other girls were 14 years old. And are you still in touch with the families of the other girls?
Yes, we are. Well, we were always kind of in touch with some of them, but when Spike Lee did the documentary 4 Little Girls, that really bonded us together because Spike had a number of premieres of the movie where there were like big events. One was in Hollywood, one was in New York, one was in DC, one was here. And so all the families traveled with him during that time. And then when all that was, the hoopla from that died down, we vowed to keep together. So my mom made sure she got everybody's phone number and address. And anytime anything came off about the girls, we would reach out. And so when mom and daddy couldn't do it anymore, now I reach out to all of them. If someone is looking for a press opportunity to talk to us, be on a TV show, or somebody writes a play about us and don't tell us. I'm that person.
Plays about y'all. Not telling you.
And don't give you a call, you know. And be like, yeah, people do crazy stuff. I always surprised at the crazy stuff people
I
do.
saw the look on your face and you booted up your lips. Yeah, it happened.
Oh yeah, we went at them hard. It was not pretty. You would not want to be on the other end of my rap. I'm the
Okay,
sweetest,
well,
kindest,
look, we'll keep
nicest
that in
person
mind. We
you
don't want
want
to
to
get in
meet.
trouble.
No, if you cross me, it's me and Jesus at you. Don't nobody want that.
Oh, and let me correct myself. Loretta is not in Savannah anymore. She is in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
We're
she's
trying
in
to get
Atlanta.
there. Trying to get there.
Okay, so I have to get you to DC and Atlanta.
And Tony
Loretta
Benita
come stay
asked,
on
are
me.
you coming to Jacksonville, Florida?
Oh man, I'm not coming to Jacksonville, but I am planning to try to come to Pensacola. And working with some people there to have me in Pensacola. But
Okay.
I understand that Asala is going to be in Jacksonville next year. So I want to try to come to that.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just
So
had
what,
their conference here. So I was there at the book signing night. So that was fun.
okay. So what do you hope readers get from reading these letters? What do you,
Oh,
what message do you want? Lasting message do you want them to get?
I hope that this book is a book of hope. I talk openly about a lot of good things in my life, but I talk openly about a lot of bad things that happened in my life and how I was able to move forward with them. Talk about growing up in all white schools and being the only Black person, but then not really being treated not treated bad by the white people, but being treated bad by my own people when I went back home, and I didn't act Black enough or speak Black enough for people around, and what that was like, you know, how embarrassing that was for me. But how I was able to reconcile the me that had grown up as a white girl, but the me that is a Black person every day, all day. And so there are other little Black girls and little boys in integrated spaces with nobody that's talking about that can share their story. So I really want them to read my book and find encouragement in it. That's I definitely want to do that. I've since lost both my parents now, and loss is something that lots of people can relate to. We had a business, we lost a business. That seemed like the end of the world. What I guess the one lesson for sure is a lot of things that seem like the end of the world, but then you wake up and there's tomorrow. So it's a true book of hope and resilience and how to fight through it.
Okay, well,
that's a beautiful way to end the night.
And just God bless you and your family for all that you endured and have still enduring. But thank you for sharing your family's story and with the world, and just reminding us how fragile life is, and that we need more love than hate.
Amen. Amen.
So thank you for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV. I was so excited when you responded that you would be on, because I said, this is a must. This is a guest that we must have.
Absolutely.
Well, I was so excited that you all found me. I don't know how y'all found me, but I'm very
glad
that you did.
That's what we do. That's what we do on this show. That's why we're looking. We're on the lookout for people that have new stuff. So thank you so much again, and you have a great evening.
Y'all too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Good night.
Bye-bye. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to be celebrating our 400th guest on next week's show. And that's in a little more than 2 years. We've had interviewed 400 different people. So, and for those of you all who are making plans to attend the National Black Book Festival, October 20th through the 22nd, it is going to be awesome. We have more, I mean, we've had people trying to get in as vendors. We've been sold out since June. I get at least 3 or 4 calls every day. And we can't take any more people. And we have more hotel rooms booked this year than we've ever had. So
it's gonna be a party in the hotel.
It's gonna be a party. So anyway, we'll see you all next week. And until then, keep reading and keep supporting African American literature. I'm Gwen Richardson, signing off.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.